Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, hello and welcome. It is the first week in October of 2017, and you can tell it by looking outside. It's like overnight, it went bang right into fall. So time to start bringing the modeling in and working smaller and not doing so many big showy things that you have to take outside and spray or let dry and all that kind of stuff. Gotta move it in. The days are getting shorter, and this week I am starting on what I call Raptor Redux, in more ways than one, because not only is this going to be the second Raptor that I've built, first being the test shot that I put the armaments on that you saw last week. This one's going to be from the ground up. This is the new kit, but parts of it I'm going to be building twice, because I need to get my template set done for the Raptor, which is mostly done, but like I said, when you work on test shots, you never know whether that's 100% of the final product, and I always like to work on 100% final product, because that way I know any changes that might have cropped up are accounted for. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build this interior for the Raptor as the instructions, out of the box, just as you would do it, but with my templates on it, so that I could show you how I'm handling the decals on the instrument panels. And then I am going to, there are other parts. There are other parts like these landing pads that I'm building it out of the box to show you how the templates work out of the box. And then I am going to strip it down and scrape it off and redo it using the photo-etch, and then show you how those photo-etch is going to be put down and decaled and detailed and all that, and lit. I'm not going to be lighting it out of the box. I'm going to wait till I can, cut the holes into everything, put the photo etch in, and then light it. So that's the rather complicated story of the Raptor Redux. And since I'm still waiting for lights to come in, I've got plenty of time to do it out of the box and from the ground up, and get the holes cut and get all the parts ready for the day when the lights come in. So let's back up. This is Monday. Let's back up to what I did over the weekend, and then we'll catch you back up to where I am right now. Working on the Raptor and getting things ready for primer. But before we do that, particularly on this wing, there are some missing plates that we need to put in these areas here. This was an idea that I got from my good friend Paul, who runs Paragraphics. He actually includes templates for these in the photo etch set, and I asked him if I could, duplicate that work in vinyl, and he said sure. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in vinyl so you don't have to cut them out. Here's what they look like in the instructions for the photo etch. But I've just made those same shapes here in vinyl, and what I'm going to do is put them on here and then leave them, and then as you're painting the both the primer and the top coats over top of them, they will take on the effect of raised plating. So let's cut them out, or pull them off the sheet and stick them down. Here's what they look like on the sheet after you've removed the surrounding vinyl, and we just follow this guide. Well, actually, if you don't choose to use the photo etch, I will just show you how they need to go on here. And there you go, they're in place. They may stick out like a sore thumb now, but once you start putting the primer and the regular paint over them, then you will be surprised how quickly they will blend in and look like the rest. So now, I guess the next thing to do would be to go ahead and put some primer over this and then mask these guys off, because they pretty much stay the primer gray color. Hello, and this is step one of what I'm calling decal preparation. All of these little console areas have decals that need to go on them, and I've come up with a new method. I don't know whether I'm the first person that's done it or not, but it works for me. And first thing I want to do is put a coat of white sandable primer on these consoles, and then we're going to mask the area where the decals will eventually go. That will become more clear as we proceed, but first thing I want to do is put a coat of white sandable primer down as a base. And we're going to start the probably the most important work that the painting masks can do, and that is to help mask off the intricate canopy lines on this Raptor. And I put it on this red material just so you can see it better, because putting it on putting a clear piece on a piece of glass makes it very difficult to see. So I'm going to walk you through the various stages of masking the canopy. And here you can see the side masks are on, and they fill out the shapes quite nicely. Now all we have left is this really odd shape. Now the templates that come with it only treat the perimeter. You still need to tape off the biggest part of the dome with your regular old masking tape of preference, but it's the edges I'm most concerned with. And here you go with the perimeter of the globe, or the front window, masked off. And now all it remains to do is to put some regular old masking tape over the rest of that and start to we got to put regular masking tape over here, and then what I'm going to do is put masking tape on the inside so that I keep any overspray from getting on the inside of the window. So let's do that. Okay, now we're seeing actual colors. This is the green tape that is just, covering up the globe. And now what I'm going to do is put some tape on the inside of here, strictly as a protection to keep any paint, because I'm going to have to move this around to paint it, and I don't want any overspray getting inside there and mucking up that wonderfully clear interior. I don't know how well you can see these, but these are the decal masks for the various Raptor instrument panels, and they match the exact orientation of these decals. They are cut a tiny bit smaller, and I'll get to that for a reason, but if you need to match them up, you can match them up by number, because trying to plot the tiny numbers would just give everybody a heart attack. So you can use the orientation to match them one for one. But what we're going to do is start putting them over top of the areas where the decals will go. And here you can see the masks are all over the areas where decals will go. And what's going to happen is that's going to allow, once you've painted your gray over top of all of this, not only does it give you a white backing for your decals, which even though they be backed in white, it's still good to have your decals going over a white rather than going over a dark color, because that's just going to mute the colors in your decal, and that's no fun. But it's also going to create an indentation for those decals to sit in, because when you take that vinyl off, there's going to be a natural little dip that is a different level than the level of all the paint that you've put on. So you can go ahead, do all of your grays and your silvers and all your painting on that. Then when you peel those out, you'll have nice little white indents to settle your decals into. And since you've not painted anything yet, you can, jockey these around and get them into the exact position that you want your decals to go in. Oftentimes, when you're putting your decals on a finished piece, you've already painted all of your details, or in some cases, you've put lighting behind them and all that. And then you go to put decals over top of that. Well, if you're monkeying your decals around into the right position, if you're jostling them around, sometimes you can scratch the paint around the decal trying to, edge it in or blot it into the right spot. And sometimes they may want to, creep around where they're not supposed to be. By having this natural indent, the decal is going to, it's like putting in a contact lens, I guess, in reverse. It's going to want to fit inside that natural indentation, and it's not going to want to move out of it. Now, I know a lot of these have frames, and which is going to help, obviously, but that's the same idea. If your decal goes inside a frame, then it's not going to want to wander outside of that frame. But some of these decals do not have, or decal locations do not have frames. Not like all of these guys on this side and along the top here. Only this one, and this one have frames. So hopefully this will be clear as we get further down the process, but I wanted you to see. And then here, of course, is how they look on the front two consoles. Those two mini screens up there do have frames, but having the decals sit in those spots, now I can go ahead and spray, take these little guys out because they're not glued in yet. But I can go ahead and spray my silver and my gray on top of that, do all of my detailing that I wish to do, and then come back and pluck those decals or those coverings off and slide the decals into those depressions. Okay, we're back to right now. Hopefully you digested all that important and tedious work I did over the weekend. But now we are back to where, see, this is what I was talking about as far as the decals and the masks kind of mirroring where on the decal sheet they went, so that you can use these numbers to kind of cross-reference to make sure you're putting them in the right spot. But this is what it looks like when all the decals are down, or the decal masks are down. So now I'm going to start putting gray over the consoles, and I'm going to put the gray Canopy color over the this is the primer. And I'm going to be putting the dark gray on the foot pads, which is over primer. And all these other ones. So let's get some gray out and start painting. Okay, on a totally unrelated note, while the paint is drying on the parts of the consoles and everything else, I've decided to take out photo-etch on parts that have no impact on what I'm doing right now. And that is the floor. And I have hollowed out the two spots for the lit risers, and I am getting ready to JB weld the brass pieces in place, one there and one right below it. These things are delicate and tough to pick up, so that's why I am being extra cautious, but they go there and there. And then there's a little step up that goes here. So I am just going to get these guys glued down in place. Okay, I've just spent the last way too long trying to see if I can get this door hinge to work. The instructions weren't as clear as they could have been. I'm pretty good with my 3D spatial geometry, but even I was having a hard time making sense. I think this illustration is flipped, but we're going to see. And if this doesn't work, I'm not going to sweat it anymore. I'm just going to yank that thing right out and maybe go with magnets or something for this door. It's a nice little feature, but I'm not going to let it hold me up trying to make it work. Okay, I think I've been met with a moderate amount of success on it, enough to keep it. I've got everything kind of fit together here. And the door does not swing open wide, but it does close tightly, which is nice. But let me try to, well, I'm trying to do this with one hand. Hold on. Okay, here's the door. Set the camera down. Here's the door. I can open it. If I can find a good place to grip it by. I might have to leave those windows out. I don't want to do that. But if I do that, I can open the door about that much. Which is not great. Better than nothing. But it's about that much total before that stresses the hinge too badly. So moderately successful. We'll see if it stays. Good morning, it's Tuesday and work is continuing on the Raptor, and you'll forgive the mess that this desk has turned into. I've been cutting holes and filing things and getting ready to light up these engines. I had to bore holes through the existing pieces, and I've got my favorite two-part epoxy putty out because there is some puttying work that needs to be done at this stage. Firstly, I need to putty the bulb and keep it in place that way. So what I do is I put a block of putty here, sink the bulb down into it, and use that as a spacer because you can kind of fiddle and finesse and fine-tune and all those F words. And get the bulb just where you want it before the putty sets up. I've just buried the bulb in some white epoxy putty here, which not only anchors the wire but gives the engine a little bit of heft. And of course, it's going to make the ship even more back heavy, which means we're going to have to do some work to make the front settle back down because the ship is notoriously back heavy. It wants to kick up like that when it's done, so we may have to end up packing a bunch of this putty under the floorboards up in the front to take up some of that weight that we're adding to the back. Very well, work is continuing this Tuesday afternoon, and I have spent the bulk of the day, and I mean the bulk of the day, working on these bulkheads. These are, forgive the blue, I'm about to go put some primer on those and hopefully they'll neaten back out. But they are the additional plates or the additional contours of the bulkheads that are meant to match the full-size set, which is how Paul has laid out his photo etch, is more to emulate the details that are in the full-sized set. Whereas I believe a lot of Moebius's reference materials are coming from the CG model, and obviously there's going to be differences in detail, probably most likely less detail in the CG because it's meant to be seen from farther away, whereas the set is a physical thing and will be examined up close. So that's where he gets his layouts for his buttons and knobs and things like that. But the actual set had a different configuration on the bulkheads than the CG did, and that's what Paul is emulating here. And he includes these templates in the photo etch kit so that you can cut those out of little bits of plastic and cobble them together like this. And that's what I've been doing. It's not been easy. Easier doing it in plastic than I imagine if he had tried to do that all in photo etch and fold it together. I don't know how well that would have worked. So I've been working on those, and I've been working on getting the engines wired up, and I got that LED buried in there. So now that I've got the construction done for today, and a lot of the little fiddly work, I think what I want to do now is go around, clean up this rat's nest of a desk, and do some painting. There is some painting on the floor, some metallics, and on these instrument panels that I can do that will get us further down the road as far as getting the decals ready to go on the consoles. Okay, I'm getting ready to pack it in for the evening. I've been working on this all day and I'm getting a bit weary of it. You can see I've got the metallic gray, or yeah, the metallic gray on the floor, on the diamond plate. That's all looking very good. And other places that I've sprayed the dark material, and I'll mask those off to spray the brown around them. And these bulkheads do look a lot better once you get a coat of primer on them that unifies all of the different blocks. And of course now I've got to start doing a little bit of puttying and pointing and all of that kind of stuff to get them ready for their top coats. And let's see, one last thing in that. Oh, I've got the engines glued together. I'm going to let them cure overnight, then come back tomorrow and sand all of those little seams because there's a bunch of them. And then get that primed and ready to go. Let's take a look at this console here. Okay, I think I've got all the different grays and metallics for the backgrounds done. I'm going to let those cure overnight and pop this guy in here and see how he looks. But let these cure overnight, and then in the morning I will take the decal masks off and put the decals on, and then we'll paint up the rest of the details, and it'll be it'll be a done thing. And the same with the console for the front, the big main dashboard. Get that ready to go. So that's the stuff we'll be tackling tomorrow. Well, good morning. It's Wednesday morning, and let me catch you up as to what I've done since the last time I've picked up this trusty camera. Started painting in some detail on the bulkheads for the control panels, and like that, and like this, and as such on that. And let's see. Oh, I've put down the plating covers for the steps, or the pads on the wings, not really steps, and for these little intakes under the wings. And let's see, basically, I've got the clamps off of the engines and got them sanded up, so I'm ready to paint those, and I'm ready to put a coat of primer on this, paint in around that. And I've been working on detailing out these bulkheads, putting down the photo etch that goes on them. Now I've decided not to try to light up these bulkheads because none of the rest of the controls on the bulkheads or on the arms, I guess the arms of the cockpit, are lit, so it would be odd to try to light those guys up. Plus those homemade plastic pieces would be a monster to try to patch the light leaks on. So let's get a coat of paint, top coat of paint on these sidewalls. Okay, you can see I've got other pieces out here drying that I have painted large and left in charge. So these guys are drying. All this is happening off to the side. And now it's time to come back to our control console and remove the masks from the areas where the decals are going to go, because the decaling is what we're going to do next. And here you can see now all of the vinyl has been removed. You've got some nice white, crisp white shapes. Did I say that they were white? Yes, crisp white shapes to put the decals over. And that's just going to help those colors pop in the decals. And it's also going to give a nice, smooth, non-metallic-y surface for them to stick down to, which should aid in them going down nice and smoothly. And like I said earlier, I know a lot of these have frames built into them, but by the sheer nature of paint being built up layer by layer over these vinyl pieces, the vinyl now gives you a natural indentation for the decals to sink into. So now I need to clear off all of this Belia schmata and get the decaling tools out, which is basically, water and Q-tips and stuff like that. But get all the painted stuff off the table and start with the decaling stuff. Okay, I'm just laying in the blue screen decals, and you can really see now these decals are backed in white. If you look at the back of them, you will see that they have white ink on them. So yes, they are backed in white, but I believe that the white background that you're putting them on is still helping them pop a little more than they would be if you put them straight over the gray. So now that I got the 3 screens in, let me start doing some of the smaller ones. I always like starting with the big decals first and then working my way down to the smaller ones. Okay, here's a very neat thing. These 2 decals, 9 and 10, are up there in the left-hand corner there. They have no backing on them at all as far as a surrounding color. So putting them on that those white squares actually makes them stand out. So knowing that, you might want to paint that a particular color before you put the mask over it, or before you put the mask down. If you want them to be, green or blue or purple or whatever, that background. I like the white there because it makes those individual buttons stand out more. Neat. They still need to dry. They haven't settled in yet, but I'm really digging how particularly these ones, show up on that white background. Like I said, you could paint those light gray first, but they really went down a lot easier than I've had experience with decals in the past. So down to let them. I've got the solva set on them now, so we're letting them settle down into place. Then I need to decide whether or not I want to spray this with a satin finish or any sort of finish on top of the decals. I'm not quite sure. I'd like to put some sort of gloss over the screens, but some of the other ones that aren't screens, that would be kind of inappropriate. Okay, now we gotta do the ones that go on the keyboard and area and the rest of it. So set this part to the side. The last of the decals are down, for at least the interior decals, in this well that goes with the keyboard well that goes in here, and the lovely dash, and the tiny little, there you go, tiny little monitors that go above the dash. But decals are all in, and I'm going to let them stew in their own juices for a while. There's the one on the back wall. But going to let those sit and smile. And as you can see, I was itching to get some tan on this little baby, so I mixed up a good amount of, it's half and half. It's half wood deck tan and half flat earth. Half flat earth and half wood deck tan for my base color. And then I'll probably go in and put some shading and some highlighting on top of that. And I know I'm probably getting ahead of myself, and I'm probably going to be making more work for me, but I got carried away and started painting all this stuff even before these pieces are all put together. So now I'm going to let everything dry and then come back to it and start doing some assemblage. But there's a whole chunk of lighting that needs to get done. Okay, well, it's mid-Wednesday afternoon, and I'm letting things dry. I've taken a time to take a hand brush and just go around and start, painting in some stuff and defining some edges like these, and letting the decals set so I can take some final pictures of that before the mass disassembly happens. But one thing I can do right now, and that is go ahead and take some of these templates off that I have had sitting in place for a while, and check the progress on those. And it's a rousing success. First I took these ones off, as you can see those nice metal grills going underneath there. I'm going to take some black and weathering and scorch around there, but I wanted to have the defined line of the silver grating first, or the gunmetal grating. And it's kind of the same deal with these foot pads. Depending on what angle you look at them, they're either silver or nice and gray. But they are nicely masked. And of course the crown jewel is the canopy. And you see nice clean gray lines around the window, and of course this was much clearer than the test kit I had, so this is an actual clear glass canopy, but that's looking very good. So today's one of those days where I feel like I ought to quit while I'm ahead, so I'm going to let these set for a while, and then I'm going to I guess what I need to do is start working on this. Reworking, I guess, would be the correct term. I need to start trimming down and filing off some details so that I can put Paul's photo-etch on it. Not Paul's photo-etch, but Paul's photo-etch. The engines are all ready for the detail that needs to go in there, and that'll finish them off, and then they get some black scorching as well. So things are going very well with the Raptor today. It's been a long, hard day here at the old workbench working on this Raptor, and there's one last thing I want to do tonight before I put it to bed, and that is something that can be drying overnight that's not going to impact too much of anything else. I spoke earlier about the need to weight the front of this ship because of everything that happens on the back, and it wants to make it kick up on its it makes it want to lean backwards. It's back heavy. So what I want to do is take the I've marked out pretty much where the front of the fuselage is, and I'm just going to pack that front with some of this epoxy putty so that it just takes up all that space. I'm not going to need to chase any wiring down through it. I'll leave a little bit of room for that, but basically I'm just going to weigh down the front of this on both sides with epoxy putty. Okay, I just formed a putty up, jammed it in there, and it's warming up, which means it's oh yeah, it's very warm now, which means it's curing, going off, or whatever you want to call it. Hopefully it will not get so warm that it deforms the plastic, but I don't think that's really going to be a problem. But there it is on both sides, and it adds a significant amount of weight to the front. And that's where we ended it for the week. It was a weird week that was. I finished work Thursday afternoon, and took off for a couple of days. So I'm going to upload this now, and we'll get back on regular schedule next week. We will be doing the more work on the Raptor. We're going to actually get rid of a lot of the work that we've done and get ready to do the photo-etch side of things. I got all the bulbs in that I've ordered, so we'll be ready to do that as soon as I get everything chiseled back down. So until a couple days from now, when I will start the next video, be good to each other, and see you here next time.